Hey guys, it's David and Michelle again. Today we're just going to talk about something that I feel it's an issue for many couples, and we're going to be talking about intimacy. And I know for the guys, we hear intimacy and we think about physical intimacy. So in this topic, it does relate to that, but in order for that to happen, you have to have emotional and spiritual intimacy. So we're going to cover a few things to help build it, because a lot of times newlywed couples, they don't have a problem talking for hours and hours and blocking out the world and just spending time together. But as your marriage progresses, things change. So I'll let Michelle talk about a few things to keep that in place here.
So one of the things for us that we found in building intimacy is we have to have boundaries and being intentional about our time, alone time together. David and I, if you know us, we have 5 kids. We now have 5 grandkids. We're very into our family. We're very into community. And so we can easily get lost in doing a lot of other things and looking over and seeing each other in the same room. And yet not really having intimacy. And we found ourselves for almost 32 years now. I don't have a problem going, hey, David, I feel neglected, or I don't feel like we spent enough time together. And he would go, what do you mean? We were sitting in the car the whole time we were driving to Dallas. Or I don't understand. We've been in the same house all day with the kids. And so there was like this learning curve for us to figure out what intimacy meant to me, and then what it meant to him, and then how to meet each other's differences in the needs of the intimacy. And so I'm a verbal processor, so he's learned in 3 decades that he has to sit down and he has to listen. And in the verbal processing, majority of the time, we're going intimacy because I'm releasing everything to him, my emotions, my day, whatever. And he is helping me process those things. And so he's being attentive to my needs. He's being attentive to my thought processing and to everything that I needed. So him in the room interacting. So my intimacy is met through interacting with him, not just looking across the room. And so just being intentional about the alone time. And then what is it that your spouse needs from you in intimacy? Is it just, hey, you know what, we're going to be alone and I'm good and my needs are met if I'm holding your hand, or if you're just sitting next to me on the couch? For me, we could watch a movie, we could hold hands, and it's still like, no, we didn't interact. We didn't communicate. So my intimacy, like the root of my intimacy and foundation of feeling like my needs were met, my intimacy needs were met, is communication. And so it's going to be different for everybody. And as you go on in your marriage, trial and error, especially for us, it was probably error, you'll learn what the other person needs and how they need their intimacy levels met.
And one thing in this is you have to be intentional about not only building but maintaining intimacy. And one thing that we do and we recommend all couples do is a relationship check-in. So most of the time we try to do it in the morning, and at the very minimum we do it at night before we go to bed. And we talk, we have time to communicate. Hey, how are you emotionally? How are you spiritually? How are you physically? And how are we relationally? Because one of the biggest enemies of a relationship is a resentment because of an unmet need. And if you're intentional about having this intimacy and these set apart times, just like, you hear in church, you need to have your alone time, you need to have your quiet time, you need to be intentional about connecting with God. You also have to be intentional about connecting in your relationship, because you want to be able to maintain that relationship on a daily basis. If you go a week and you don't know what's going on in your spouse's life, you're going to have major problems. So we sit aside time and we ask each other, hey, how are you doing? And that way, you'll know if your spouse is off, but if you have these targeted milestones of when you're going to get together and talk about it, that's the time it's going to do it. You're not going to be running out the door, notice something, and try to have a heartfelt conversation, because that usually ends badly. But if you know, hey, I need to bring this up in our check-in time tonight, or I need to bring this up tomorrow, I feel like she's off, that is going to be much more fruitful than an on-the-fly conversation.
So how do you build intimacy in your relationship, and how do you maintain intimacy in your relationship? Because they're 2 different things. First and foremost, if you're newly married, you have to figure out what the other person needs from you. And sometimes it's not probably the necessarily right way to do it, but we want the other person to figure us out. We don't want to have to come and be like, hey, I personally don't have a problem doing that. I tell David, hey, here, I need you to talk to me right now. But a lot of people, they just think the other person should figure it out. So as you begin to learn the things that your spouse needs from you to feel connected, use those things and then make boundaries to protect those things. Protect your date nights, protect your alone time, protect your walks, whatever it is that where you two connect together that gets you closer and closer. Protect those things with your boundaries. And boundaries become hard. So what do you do when you have kids? Who gets more attention? It just depends on your season. Everybody's in a different season. Some of us just had babies. Some of us have teenagers. Some of us are empty nesters. You have to constantly be adjusting. And don't just assume in your mind, well, I'm going to adjust this because she has to go and be with the baby way more than she used to. Communicate together. Hey, we're in a different season. How do we adjust this so that our needs are still met for each other?
And one thing you can do is, as you learn to know your spouse over time, you know things that little things that I just call them like relationship rituals. So Michelle loves iced coffee in the morning. You don't wake up and your coffee pot doesn't brew out iced coffee. So part of our ritual is I make sure there's coffee at night, put it in the fridge, and then she has iced coffee in the morning. One of the things that Michelle does for me is, even though I'm an adult, every time we eat, she serves my plate. It's just little things like that. Like we like to go on walks after dinner. There's little things that are special in only your relationship. Things that other people don't do for you. Things that maybe people aren't even totally aware of. But you know that when you're doing good in your relationship, these things are on target. And they can also be indicators. If for some reason some of these things are off or they're not happening, then that can also help you understand, hey, maybe there's something off and I need to have a conversation.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. If you feel disconnected throughout the week with your spouse, I would suggest first looking back in your memory and being like, well, yesterday, what was it like the day before? When's the last time we did the walk? When's the last time we sat down and had just true, real communication? And if you begin to notice that those things have been missed and skipped, maybe the boundaries were impended on, just go and sit down and be like, hey, you know what? Let's get back to this. And like I said, I'm really good at that. And you need to be in a place in your marriage where you can just say, hey, I do this all the time. I'm feeling neglected today, David. And he goes, okay, why do you think you're feeling neglected? And then our intimacy begins right there because we sit down and we talk about it. And then together, like I said, I'm a verbal processor. We'll process, oh, you know what? We didn't go on our walk last night or whatever it is. So again, communication is the key to a good marriage in every aspect and avenue. And so if you have questions for us, or if you have comments or different ideas and ways that you guys build intimacy and maintain intimacy in your marriage, we would love for you guys to post it in the comments. And just reach out to us if you have any statements, questions, you just want to talk. We would love to just be there for you and to just get to know you. So thank you. Mm-hmm. Bye. It's recording.